The stars were dying, and Ambassador Kethavar knew it was only a matter of time before his homeworld joined them. He stood on the observation deck of his ship, watching Earth's blue marble grow larger through the viewport. The planet looked peaceful from space with its white clouds and green continents. It was hard to believe that this small world might hold the key to saving the galaxy. Behind him, his aide Veltara checked her datapad for the 100th time. Ambassador, our intelligence reports show this species has barely achieved orbital flight. They don't even have faster-than-light travel. How can they possibly help us? Kethavar's 6 arms flexed with nervous energy. The Altarian Republic had fallen back 3 more star systems while he made this desperate journey to Earth. 17 systems had already been consumed by the Void Swarm. Billions of lives lost. Entire civilizations turned to cosmic dust. The Coalition is dying, Veltara, he said quietly. The Zephyrians lost their entire 4th fleet last week. The Nixari can barely hold their outer colonies. We've tried everything. Plasma weapons, quantum bombs, even biological warfare. Nothing stops the swarm. He turned away from the window and faced his aide. But our computers found something interesting about this species. They show unusual patterns in their behavior. Their planet has gone through multiple extinction events, yet they survived them all. More than survived, and they became stronger. Veltara looked confused. Stronger? But they're primitives, Ambassador. They still use chemical rockets. That's what makes them interesting, Kethavar replied. Every other species in the galaxy developed technology to escape their hostile environments. These humans learned to master theirs instead. The ship shuddered slightly as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Through the viewport, Kethavar could see the sprawling cities and geometric patterns of farmland. But he could also see something else. The orbital defense platforms that shouldn't exist for a pre-FTL species. Sir, Veltara said, her voice tight with surprise. I'm receiving a transmission. It's in perfect galactic standard. Kethavar raised an eyebrow. Put it through. A human face appeared on the communication screen. The creature had dark skin and short black hair, with eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. When it spoke, its voice was calm and professional. This is General Sarah Martinez of the United Nations Space Command. Ambassador Kethavar, we've been expecting you. The Altarian diplomat felt his blood chill. You know who I am? We know why you're here too, the human replied. The Void Swarm. 17 systems destroyed in 3 months. You're looking for soldiers to help fight them. Kethavar exchanged glances with Veltara. How do you know about the war? Your species doesn't have galactic communication technology. General Martinez smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. We've been listening to your broadcasts for 40 years, Ambassador. We know about the Coalition, the trade routes, the political structures. We know about the war. The ship touched down at what the humans called Kennedy Space Center. Kethavar and his small diplomatic team were escorted through corridors filled with strange artwork. Images of humans in combat, humans exploring hostile environments, humans facing creatures that looked remarkably similar to the Void Swarm. They were led to a large conference room where several humans waited. General Martinez stood at the head of a long table, while other humans in military uniforms sat along the sides. Each one had the same intense look in their eyes, alert, predatory, dangerous. Please sit, Martinez said, gesturing to chairs that had been modified for Altarian physiology. Let's discuss your problem. Kethavar remained standing. General, my species has been fighting wars for 10,000 years. We understand military tactics and strategy. But this enemy is different. The swarm adapts to everything we throw at them. Their bioarmor evolves to resist our weapons. Their psychic screams drive our soldiers insane. We need fresh ideas, new approaches. You need killers, said a human sitting near the end of the table. He was older than the others, with gray hair and scars on his hands. I'm Colonel Williams, Special Operations. I've seen your battle reports, Ambassador. Your people fight like civilized beings. You follow rules of engagement, minimize civilian casualties, try to preserve infrastructure. Of course, Kethavar replied. That's what separates us from animals. The humans looked at each other and several of them chuckled. It wasn't a friendly sound. General Martinez stood and walked to a large screen on the wall. Let me show you something, Ambassador. The screen came alive with images, vast plains filled with massive creatures, dense jungles where everything seemed designed to kill, frozen wastelands that stretched to the horizon. This is Earth 10,000 years ago. Everything on this planet was trying to kill us. Giant predators, poisonous plants, extreme weather, disease, starvation. Most species would have built shelters and waited for evolution to make them stronger. The images changed to show early humans with primitive weapons, hunting creatures many times their size. We did something different. We learned to hunt the hunters. We tracked mammoths across frozen continents for weeks. We followed wounded prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We turned every disadvantage into a weapon. Kethavar felt uncomfortable watching the images. The humans seemed so small compared to their prey, yet they showed no fear. They moved with purpose, coordinating their attacks with deadly precision. We didn't just survive on Earth, Martinez continued. We became the apex predator. Do you know what happened to all those giant creatures, Ambassador? We killed them. All of them. We hunted them until they were extinct. Veltara whispered something in Altarian. Kethavar didn't need to translate. She was asking if the humans were dangerous. You want soldiers, Martinez said, turning back to face them. We don't make soldiers on Earth, we make something much more dangerous. What do you mean? Kethavar asked. Colonel Williams stood up. A soldier follows orders and fights according to doctrine. They engage the enemy in organized formations with standard weapons and tactics. He walked to a cabinet and pulled out a curved blade that gleamed under the lights. This is what we make on Earth. He held up the blade so the light caught its edge. We make hunters. We make predators. We make things that don't stop until their prey is dead. General Martinez nodded. Your void swarm thinks it's the ultimate predator. It's used to prey that runs away or fights defensively. It's never faced something that hunts it back. She pressed a button and the screen showed videos of human military training. Kethavar watched in fascination and horror as humans pushed their bodies beyond what should be possible. They trained in environments that would kill most galactic species. They practiced techniques that seemed designed to cause maximum psychological damage to their enemies. We'll help you fight your war, Martinez said. But understand what you're asking for. Once we start hunting the swarm, we won't stop until every last one of them is dead. We don't take prisoners. We don't negotiate. We don't show mercy. Kethavar looked around the room at the human faces. Each one showed the same expression, calm, focused, deadly. These weren't the primitive creatures he had expected to find. These were apex predators who had learned to use technology. How many can you send? He asked quietly. 200 of our best, Martinez replied. That should be enough to start. 200? Veltara couldn't hide her shock. Ambassador, we need thousands. Colonel Williams smiled and Kethavar felt his skin crawl. Ma'am, you're thinking like prey. 200 human hunters can do what 10,000 soldiers cannot. General Martinez walked to the window overlooking the Space Center. Ambassador, you came here asking for soldiers. We're going to give you slayers instead. The question is, are you prepared for what that means? Kethavar thought about the 17 dead star systems. He thought about the billions of lives already lost. He thought about his own homeworld, waiting for the inevitable swarm attack. When can they leave? He asked. They're already packed, Martinez replied. Welcome to the war, Ambassador. Let's go hunting. The Coalition staging ground on Kepler 442b buzzed with nervous energy as word spread that the human reinforcements had arrived. Commander Thrak of the Zephyrian Defense Corps stood on the landing platform, watching the human transport ship descend through the orange-tinted atmosphere. Finally, muttered Captain Yixtal, Thrak's aide. Another 200 troops won't change much, but every soldier counts. Thrak nodded, though privately he doubted these primitive aliens would make any difference. The Void Swarm had crushed every force sent against them. What could a pre-FTL species possibly offer? The transport ship was unlike anything in the Coalition fleet. It was painted in strange camouflage patterns and covered with symbols that looked almost ritualistic. As the landing ramp lowered, Thrak expected to see organized military formations marching out in perfect order. Instead, he saw something that made his foreheart skip a beat. The humans didn't march. They prowled. Each one moved differently, like individual predators rather than disciplined soldiers. Their equipment was a chaotic mix of high-tech energy, weapons and primitive tools that seemed ancient by galactic standards. Some carried blades alongside their plasma rifles. Others wore armor decorated with what looked like animal teeth and claws. At the front of the group walked a human female with short brown hair and a scar running from her left ear to her jaw. Her name tag read Vasquez, and her rank insignia marked her as their captain. She approached Thrak with a stride that reminded him uncomfortably of the great hunting cats from his homeworld. "Commander Thrak?" she asked in accented galactic standard. "Captain Elena Vasquez, 1st Terran Hunter Company. We're here to kill some monsters." Thrak tried to maintain his professional composure. "Welcome to Kepler Station, Captain. I trust your journey was comfortable?" Vasquez looked around the base, with eyes that seemed to catalog every potential hiding spot and ambush point. "Comfortable enough. Where's the enemy?" "The swarm typically attacks along 3 main vectors," Thrak began, activating his tactical display. "Our defensive positions are established here, here, and here. We follow standard coalition doctrine. Overlapping fields of fire, layered defenses, coordinated withdrawal points." One of the humans behind Vasquez snorted with amusement. Thrak turned to see a massive male with arms covered in strange markings. His name tag read Johnson, and his rank showed Sergeant. "Something funny, Sergeant?" Thrak asked. Johnson stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, those are prey tactics. You're setting up to be hunted." "Excuse me?" Vasquez pulled up the tactical display and studied it for a moment. "Your people have been fighting this war like it's a chess match, very organized, very predictable." She pointed to the defensive positions. "The swarm adapts to patterns. You keep using the same strategies. They keep finding new ways to counter them. These strategies have served the coalition for centuries," Thrak replied stiffly. "Against enemies that think like you do," another human said. This one was smaller than the others, with pale skin and black hair tied back in a practical knot. Her name tag read Tanaka. "The swarm isn't an army, Commander. It's a pack of monsters. You fight monsters differently." Captain Yixtal stepped forward. "And how exactly do primitives like you suggest we fight them?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Every human turned to look at Yixtal with expressions that made Thrak's skin crawl. There was something predatory in their gaze, something that triggered ancient survival instincts. Vasquez smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "Primitives?" She unsheathed a blade from her hip, a monomolecular edge that hummed with energy. "Captain, my species spent 2 million years perfecting the art of killing things bigger and stronger than us. We've been getting ready for something like the swarm our entire evolutionary history." She held up the blade so the light caught its edge. "On Earth, we have a name for creatures like the Void Swarm. We call them monsters, and we've gotten very, very good at killing monsters." The briefing continued for another hour, with coalition officers explaining standard patrol routes and engagement protocols. The humans listened politely, but Thrak could see them mentally cataloging information like hunters studying new territory. Finally, Vasquez stood up. "Commander, we appreciate the briefing, but my people need to see the enemy for themselves. When's the next patrol?" "Tomorrow at 0800 hours, Thrak replied. "Standard reconnaissance sweep of Sector 7. "We'll take point," Vasquez said. "Captain, I don't think that's wise. Your people need time to integrate with coalition forces, learn our procedures." "Commander," Vasquez interrupted, "we didn't come here to learn your procedures. We came here to hunt." The next morning, Thrak watched nervously as the joint patrol prepared to launch. 2 coalition shuttles followed standard formation protocols, maintaining precise distance and communication intervals. The human shuttle disappeared. "Where did they go?" Yixtal asked, staring at the sensor readings. "They're using some kind of stealth technology," the sensor operator reported. "Thermal dampeners, electromagnetic baffles. I can barely track them." Thrak frowned. "I thought they were pre-FTL. How do they have advanced stealth capabilities?" "Maybe being hunted for millions of years teaches you how to hide," Yixtal muttered. The patrol reached Sector 7 without incident. Coalition forces maintained their standard formation, scanning for swarm activity according to established protocols. The humans had scattered across the asteroid field like hunting wolves, using the terrain in ways that confused their alien allies. Then the proximity alarm started screaming. "Swarm contact," the sensor operator shouted. "Multiple signatures incoming from Vector 27 Mark IV. Thrak's blood turned to ice as he saw the sensor display. 15 swarm units, each the size of a small ship, closing fast on their position. Their bioarmor gleamed with an oily sheen that seemed to absorb light. "All units, fall back to defensive formation beta," Thrak ordered. "Concentrate fire on lead elements." Coalition forces engaged according to doctrine. Energy beams lanced out toward the swarm units, scoring hits on their crystalline hide. But as always, the creatures began adapting. Their bioarmor shifted and changed, developing resistance to the coalition weapons. "Armor is adapting," someone reported. "Weapon effectiveness dropping to 60%, 40%, 20%. Thrak watched in familiar despair as the swarm shrugged off their attacks. In minutes, they would be overrun. Another coalition patrol would be added to the casualty lists. Then something impossible happened. The largest swarm unit suddenly exploded from the inside. Crystalline fragments scattered through space as something burst out of its core. On the tactical display, Thrak could see a single human signature moving through the debris field. "What just happened?" Yixtal whispered. Before anyone could answer, 2 more swarm units went dark, then 3 more. The creatures weren't being destroyed by energy weapons. They were being taken apart by something that had gotten inside their defenses. Thrak's communicator crackled to life. "Coalition forces, this is Sergeant Johnson. You might want to back off a bit. Things are about to get messy." Through the viewport, Thrak could see flashes of light as the human shuttles suddenly appeared in the middle of the swarm formation. But they weren't fighting like any military force he'd ever seen. They moved like a pack of predators, coordinating their attacks with deadly precision. One human, the small female called Tanaka, had somehow gotten inside a swarm unit's bioarmor. She was cutting her way out with what looked like a primitive chainsaw, spraying alien blood across her environmental suit. Another group had turned their shuttle into a ram, driving it straight through a swarm creature's sensor cluster before abandoning ship and continuing the fight in zero gravity with nothing but handheld weapons. "They're insane," Yixtal breathed. "No," Thrak replied, watching Vasquez lead her team in a coordinated assault that would have been suicide for any other species. "They're hunters." The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, 15 swarm units were dead, and the human casualties were 0. Vasquez's voice came over the comm, calm and professional. "Sector 7 is clear, Commander, ready for the next patrol." Thrak stared at the debris field where 15 supposedly invincible creatures had been torn apart by 200 humans with modified weapons and primitive tactics. "Captain Vasquez," he said slowly, "what exactly are you people?" There was a pause before she answered. "We're what happens when prey evolves to become the hunter, Commander. And we've been waiting a long time for something like the swarm to show up." As the patrol returned to base, Thrak found himself looking at the humans with a mixture of respect and fear. These weren't soldiers in any sense his people understood. They were something far more dangerous. They were apex predators that had learned to use starships. The alarm klaxons at Proxima Station screamed through the corridors like dying animals. Commander Thrak ran through the chaos, trying to coordinate the evacuation, while his officers shouted damage reports over the emergency channels. Multiple swarm breaches on levels 7 through 12. Lieutenant Kaxaval reported, his voice high with panic. "They're inside the station." Through the station's massive viewports, Thrak could see the void swarm fleet surrounding Proxima, like a swarm of angry insects. Dozens of bioships clung to the station's hull, boring through the armor with acid secretions and crystalline drill appendages. This was supposed to be impossible. Proxima Station was the Coalition's most heavily defended outpost, protected by overlapping shield grids and weapons platforms. The swarm had punched through their defenses like they were made of paper. "Sir, we have Coalition forces falling back to Section 4, another officer reported. "The Nexari 3rd Battalion is requesting immediate evacuation." Thrak nodded grimly. This was how it always went. The swarm attacked. Coalition forces fought bravely for a while, then the creatures adapted and everyone died. He was about to order a general retreat when a new voice came over the comm. "Coalition Command, this is Captain Vasquez. 1st Terran Hunter Company is moving to intercept." "Captain, negative," Thrak replied. "The station is compromised. We're initiating evacuation protocols." "Commander, respectfully, screw your evacuation protocols. We came here to hunt monsters, not run from them." Before Thrak could respond, The comm channel switched to a different frequency. He could hear human voices talking to each other in their strange, clipped language. Johnson, take your squad through Maintenance Tunnel 7. Flank them from below. Copy that, Captain. Tanaka, you still got that chainsaw? Always, Sarge. Want me to make some noise? Make all the noise you want. Let these things know what's coming for them. Thrak watched the tactical display in fascination and horror as the human signals scattered throughout the station. Instead of falling back to defensive positions like proper soldiers, they were moving deeper into swarm-controlled territory. What are they doing? Lieutenant Kaxaval asked. They're hunting, Thrak replied quietly. On Level 9, Sergeant Marcus Johnson led his squad through a maintenance tunnel barely wide enough for their armor. The walls vibrated with the sound of swarm creatures moving through the corridors above them. How many? Whispered Corporal Liu, checking her weapon charge. Johnson consulted his scanner. 17 contacts in the central hub. Big ones, 17? Private Davis sounded worried. Sarge, there's only 6 of us. Johnson smiled in the darkness. Davis, where I come from, those are good odds. He activated his comm. All squads, this is Alpha Team. We're in position. Remember, these things adapt to energy weapons, so save your plasma charges for finishing shots. Use kinetic weapons for primary damage. Roger that, Sarge, came Tanaka's voice. Beta Team ready to party. Gamma Team in position, reported Corporal Martinez. These tunnels smell like wet dog and death. That's the smell of fear, Martinez, Johnson replied. The swarm's starting to learn that it's not the only predator in the galaxy. The humans burst from 3 different access points simultaneously. The swarm creatures in the central hub, massive crystalline horrors with bioarmor that shifted and flowed like living metal, turned to face this new threat, but the humans weren't fighting like anything the swarm had encountered before. Private Tanaka dropped from a ceiling vent directly onto the back of the largest creature, her modified chainsaw screaming as it bit into alien flesh. The swarm unit tried to adapt its armor to resist the cutting blade, but the chainsaw was purely mechanical. No energy signature to counter. Just spinning metal teeth that refused to stop. Sergeant Johnson and his team moved through the chamber like hunting wolves, using the station's architecture to their advantage. They fired from cover, then moved before the swarm could lock onto their positions. When the creatures adapted their armor to resist plasma fire, the humans switched to slug throwers, ancient kinetic weapons that punched through bioarmor with raw physical force. Target the joints, Johnson shouted over the chaos. These things can't adapt bone structure. Corporal Liu put 3 rounds into a swarm unit's leg articulation, dropping the creature to the deck where Davis finished it with a plasma charge to the head. But the real shock came when the humans started using psychological warfare. Attention, space bugs. Tanaka's voice echoed through the station's speaker system as she rode her chainsaw-equipped swarm unit like a mechanical bull. This is Earth calling. We're the things your nightmares have nightmares about. The sound was inhuman. Part chainsaw, part war cry, part laughter. It resonated through the bio-neural networks that connected the swarm units, carrying with it something the creatures had never experienced before, the fear of being prey. On the command deck, Thrak watched the impossible unfold on his sensors. The human life signs were moving through swarm-controlled sections like antibodies fighting an infection. And somehow, impossibly, they were winning. Sir? His sensor operator said in amazement. I'm reading 17 confirmed swarm kills in Section 9. 0 human casualties, and that's impossible, Lieutenant Kaxaval protested. The Zephyrian 4th Fleet couldn't achieve those numbers with 10,000 troops. The comm crackled with Captain Vasquez's voice. Coalition Command Central Hub is secure, moving to Section 7 to assist the Nexari. Captain, Thrak transmitted. The Nexari 3rd Battalion was overrun 20 minutes ago. There are no survivors in Section 7. Commander, you might want to check your sensors again. Thrak looked at his display and felt his 4 hearts stop. Section 7 was showing Nexari life signs, dozens of them clustered in what had been a lost defensive position. How is that possible? He whispered. The answer came from Corporal Martinez. We found your Nexari friends hiding in a storage bay. Poor guys were scared out of their minds, but they're breathing. We've established a defensive perimeter and we're escorting them to the evacuation point. You found survivors in a swarm-controlled section? Commander, Martinez replied. The swarm had them cornered, but they hadn't actually killed them yet. I think these things were trying to figure out how the Nexari worked before eating them. Bad mistake. What do you mean? While they were studying the Nexari, we were studying them. Learned some interesting things about their anatomy. Turns out they have 17 major nerve clusters and 3 critical blood vessels. Very helpful information. As the humans escorted the rescued Nixari to safety, Thrak began to understand what he was witnessing. The Coalition had been fighting a war of attrition against an adaptive enemy. The humans were fighting a hunting campaign against prey. All swarm contacts in sections 7 through 12 have gone dark, his sensor operator reported. I'm not reading any bioship activity around the docking bays either. What happened to the bioships? Thrak asked. Captain Vasquez answered. Gamma team happened to them, Commander. Turns out those things are really vulnerable when you plant explosive charges inside their digestive systems. You went inside the bioships? Someone had to clean them out. Besides, we wanted to see how they worked. Professional curiosity. The battle for Proxima Station lasted 4 hours and 17 minutes. When it was over, 43 swarm units had been eliminated and 12 bioships had been destroyed. Coalition casualties were minimal, mostly from the initial surprise attack before the humans arrived. Human casualties were 0. As the station's lights came back online and the evacuation was called off, Thrak found himself in the central hub where the heaviest fighting had occurred. The walls were covered in alien blood and scattered pieces of crystalline bioarmor. In the center of the chamber, Private Tanaka was field stripping her chainsaw while humming what sounded like a human war song. Private, he said carefully. Are you injured? She looked up with eyes that seemed far too calm for someone who had just single-handedly killed 3 creatures the size of battle tanks. No, sir, Commander. Just maintenance. You can't let the blade get gunked up with alien blood or it loses its edge. You seem very relaxed for someone who just survived mortal combat. Tanaka smiled, and Thrak felt that familiar chill run down his spine. Sir, with respect, that wasn't mortal combat. That was just Tuesday morning. As Thrak walked through the station surveying the aftermath, he realized something that shook him to his core. The humans weren't celebrating their victory. They weren't traumatized by the violence. They were disappointed. Only 43? He heard Sergeant Johnson say to one of his men. I was hoping for an even 50. Next time, Sarge, Private Davis replied. Captain says there's another swarm fleet 2 systems over. Bigger one. Good, Johnson said, checking his weapons. These things are starting to get predictable. Commander Thrak looked around at the human soldiers as they cleaned their weapons and prepared for the next fight. These weren't warriors in any sense his people understood. They were something far more terrifying. They were apex predators, and they had just discovered that the galaxy was full of prey. Word spread through the Coalition fleet like wildfire. The humans had done the impossible at Proxima Station, and suddenly every desperate commander in the galaxy wanted their own pack of Terran hunters. General Martinez stood in the war room aboard the Coalition flagship, watching as request after request poured in from across the front lines. The holographic display showed 18 different battle zones where Coalition forces were barely holding the line against swarm attacks. General, Admiral Kethvar said, his 6 arms gesturing at the tactical display, we need human forces at all these positions. Can Earth provide more troops? Martinez studied the map with calm eyes. We can provide specialists, Admiral, but not the way you're thinking. She gestured to Captain Vasquez, who stepped forward carrying a data pad. Captain, show them what we've learned. Vasquez activated the display showing footage from recent battles. The swarm operates using 3 basic attack patterns: overwhelming assault, adaptive defense, and psychological terror. They've been using the same strategies for millions of years because they've never needed to change. The footage showed swarm bioships attacking a Nexari colony. The creatures moved with mechanical precision, following preset behavioral patterns that had worked against every species they had encountered. But here's what we discovered, Vasquez continued. The display switched to show human forces engaging the swarm. They can't adapt to tactics they've never seen before. Their entire evolutionary strategy is based on encountering similar enemies using similar methods. Commander Thrak, who had requested transfer to the Human Command Division, nodded agreement. The captain is correct. After fighting alongside human forces for 3 weeks, I've observed that the swarm becomes confused when faced with unpredictable behavior. Confused? Admiral Kethvar asked. They don't know how to process prey that hunts them back, General Martinez explained. Every other species in the galaxy fights defensively. Humans fight offensively. It breaks their programming. The display showed a map of human deployment across the Coalition front lines. Instead of traditional military units, Earth had sent specialized teams: the Antarctic Division for void-based operations, the Amazon Battalion for hostile ecosystem warfare, and the Urban Hunters for space station and city ship environments. But that's only 600 humans total, protested General Yixran of the Altarian Republic. We need thousands of troops to hold the line. Captain Vasquez smiled with predatory satisfaction. General, you're thinking like prey again. We're not here to hold lines. We're here to teach your people how to hunt. 3 days later, Vasquez found herself on a coalition training ground, facing 200 nervous Altarian pilots. These were experienced veterans who had survived dozens of battles against the swarm, but they looked at her with a mixture of respect and fear. Your current engagement doctrine, she began, pacing in front of the assembled pilots, is based on formation flying and coordinated energy weapon strikes. Very civilized, very predictable, very easy for the swarm to counter. She activated a holographic display showing a typical coalition fleet engagement. You attack in waves, maintain safe distances, and withdraw when your shields reach critical levels. The swarm adapts to your weapon frequencies and waits for you to run out of ammunition. Lieutenant Veltara, one of the more experienced pilots, raised her hand. Captain, those tactics have served us well for centuries. They minimize casualties and preserve resources. They also guarantee that you lose, Vasquez replied bluntly. You're fighting a war of attrition against an enemy that can replace its losses faster than you can. What you need is a war of extermination. The hologram changed to show human fighter tactics. The Earth pilots moved like hunting wolves, using persistence and coordination to wear down individual swarm bioships. This is how persistence hunters work, Vasquez explained. You don't attack the whole herd. You pick one target and chase it until it dies of exhaustion. Then you pick another target. She spent the next 6 hours teaching the Altarians how to think like predators. Instead of maintaining formation, they learned to spread out and attack from multiple vectors. Instead of conserving ammunition, they learned to press attacks until the enemy was completely destroyed. But what about casualties? Veltara asked. Your tactics seem very dangerous. Vasquez looked at her with eyes that had seen too many battles. Lieutenant, what's more dangerous? Losing a few pilots in aggressive attacks or losing entire fleets to swarm adaptation? Sometimes the safest thing to do is the most violent thing you can imagine. Across the galaxy, similar training sessions were taking place. On Kepler Station, Sergeant Johnson was teaching Zephyrian ground troops how to use their natural, intimidating appearance as psychological warfare. Your people are 7 feet tall with razor-sharp claws, he told the assembled soldiers, but you fight like you're trying to minimize damage. That's backwards thinking. He demonstrated by having the Zephyrians practice their most terrifying battle roars. The swarm communicates through bio-neural networks. Loud noises disrupt their coordination. You're not just soldiers, you're walking sonic weapons. Private Torres, a human communications specialist, had discovered something even more interesting. Sergeant, I've been monitoring swarm transmissions during battles with human forces. Their bio-neural traffic spikes dramatically when they encounter us. What kind of spikes? Johnson asked. Fear responses, Sarge. They're developing trauma patterns. On the medical station Omega-7, Dr. Kala Okafor was studying captured swarm specimens when she made a discovery that changed everything. The creatures in her lab, taken alive during human raids, were exhibiting behaviors that defied everything the Coalition knew about the species. Admiral, she transmitted to the fleet command, you need to see this immediately. Kethavar arrived within an hour, accompanied by General Martinez and Captain Vasquez. In the containment lab, 3 swarm units huddled in the corner farthest from the entrance. When the humans entered the room, the creatures actually recoiled. That's impossible, Kethavar whispered. The swarm doesn't experience fear. Dr. Okafor pulled up her research data. That's what we thought. But look at their bio-neural activity when exposed to human pheromones. The display showed dramatic spikes in the creature's brain patterns. They're developing what can only be described as anxiety responses. They're starting to fear us, Martinez said quietly. It's more than that, Okafor continued. I played recordings of human voices for them. Watch this. She activated a speaker that broadcasted Tanaka's voice from the Proxima Station battle. The swarm units immediately pressed themselves against the far wall, their bioarmor shifting to defensive configurations. In 12 million years of galactic conquest, Okafor explained, They've never encountered a species that actively hunts them. Their entire neural structure is designed around being the ultimate predator. They literally don't know how to process being prey. Captain Vasquez studied the cowering creatures with professional interest. "Doctor, how long have they been like this?" "The behavior started 3 days after capture. It's getting stronger. I think they're traumatized." General Martinez turned to Admiral Kethvar. "Admiral, I recommend we accelerate deployment of our specialist teams. The swarm's adaptation strategy is failing. They're not evolving defenses. They're developing psychological disorders." As they left the medical station, Kethvar found himself walking beside Vasquez. "Captain, may I ask you something?" "Go ahead, Admiral." "When your people first evolved on Earth, what happened to the other apex predators?" Vasquez considered the question. "We killed them all, sir. Competition for resources. It was them or us, and now?" She looked out through the viewport at the stars where swarm fleets lurked in the darkness. "Now we're not competing for resources anymore, Admiral. We're just removing a pest problem." Kethvar felt a chill run through his entire body. "Captain, the swarm has conquered entire star systems. Billions of lives and were lost because nobody knew how to hunt them properly." Vasquez interrupted. "That problem is being corrected." As reports continued to come in from across the front lines, a pattern began to emerge. Coalition forces working with human trainers were achieving victory ratios that had been unthinkable just months before. The swarm's legendary adaptability was failing them for the first time in their evolutionary history. But the most disturbing reports came from human deep space reconnaissance teams. They had found something in the outer systems that changed the entire scope of the war. "Admiral," came the transmission from Captain Torres aboard the stealth ship Predator, "you're going to want to see this. We found a swarm breeding facility. And sir, they're not breeding. They're evacuating." The Veil Nebula had been swarm territory for over 3 million years. Its dense gas clouds and twisted gravity fields made it the perfect hiding place for their massive hive constructs. No coalition force had ever penetrated this deep into their territory and returned alive. General Martinez stood on the bridge of the Earth ship Apex Predator, watching the nebula swirl on the main screen like a cosmic storm. Behind her, 50 human vessels moved through the gas clouds with predatory grace. Their hulls painted in hunting patterns that would have seemed primitive to other species. "Contact bearing 0 Mark 7, reported Lieutenant Commander Chen from the sensor station. "It's big, General. Really big." The main screen resolved into an image that made even the hardened human crew pause. The swarm hive was a bioconstruct the size of a small moon, its surface covered in millions of smaller structures that pulsed with organic light. Streams of bioships moved around it like antibodies protecting a diseased organ. "Biomass readings are off the charts," Chen continued. "That thing has enough organic material to build 1,000 fleets." Admiral Kethvar, who had insisted on joining the human expedition, stared at the hive with all 6 of his eyes wide. "General, this is suicide. That facility could produce enough swarm units to overrun every coalition world." "Could," Martinez agreed. "But it won't." She activated the ship's communication system. "All vessels, this is Apex Leader. Target acquired. Remember, we're not here to destroy the hive. We're here to deliver a message." Captain Vasquez's voice came back over the comm from the assault ship Hunter's Moon. "Copy that, General. Strike teams are ready for deployment." The plan was uniquely human in its audacity. Instead of attacking the hive directly, they were going to infiltrate it. Get inside the swarm's collective consciousness and show them something that would change the course of the war forever. "General," Admiral Kethvar said nervously, "the Coalition has never attempted direct neural interface with the swarm. The psychic feedback could kill anyone who tries." Martinez turned to face him with calm eyes. "Admiral, humans have been dealing with things that try to kill us for millions of years. We've gotten very good at surviving impossible situations. The assault began with surgical precision. Human ships slipped through the hive's defenses like antibodies infiltrating a healthy organism. The swarm bioships responded according to their programming, but their tactics were designed for conventional warfare, not for hunters who use their own defensive systems against them. "Breach successful," reported Captain Torres from the stealth ship Shadow Stalker. "We're inside their outer perimeter. Swarm units are adapting to our energy signatures, but they can't adapt to ramming speed." On her screen, Martinez watched as Torres drove her ship directly through a bioconstruct's sensor array, using kinetic force to punch through defenses that had evolved to resist energy weapons. The real assault team was much smaller. Vasquez led 12 humans in modified armor through the hive's bio-corridors, following neural pathways toward the central consciousness node. Each step took them deeper into the alien structure, past chambers filled with developing swarm units and processing centers that turned organic matter into living weapons. "This place is like a giant stomach," reported Sergeant Johnson over the comm. "Everything here is designed to consume and convert." "Stay focused," Vasquez replied. "We're almost at the core." Behind them, the rest of the strike force was implementing the second part of the plan. Dr. Okafor and her team were releasing modified bioagents throughout the hive, not weapons, but information carriers designed to spread through the swarm's neural network. "Uploading data package now," Okafor transmitted. "The bioagents should reach every connected unit within the hive." The data package contained something no swarm unit had ever experienced: Earth's evolutionary history. Billions of years of predation, extinction events, and the endless cycle of hunter and prey that had forged humanity into the ultimate survivors. As the information spread through the hive's neural network, something unprecedented happened. The swarm units stopped their coordinated movements and began exhibiting individual behaviors. Some retreated to defensive positions, others simply shut down completely. "They're having a collective nervous breakdown," Dr. Okafor reported with amazement. "The hive mind is fragmenting as individual units process the data." Vasquez and her team reached the central core, a massive chamber filled with bio-neural processors that served as the hive's brain. At the center hung a construct that looked like a living computer, its surface covered with millions of sensory organs. "That's it," she said to her team. "The collective consciousness. Everyone ready?" The final phase required direct neural contact. Vasquez approached the central processor and activated her modified communicator, a device that could interface with alien neural networks, while protecting human consciousness from psychic feedback. The contact was immediate and overwhelming. Vasquez found herself connected to the minds of billions of swarm units across the galaxy. But instead of the cold, efficient collective she expected, she encountered something that shocked her to her core: fear, pure, primal terror on a scale that defied comprehension. The swarm had been the galaxy's apex predator for 12 million years. They had consumed entire civilizations without ever encountering meaningful resistance. But the information package had shown them something that broke their fundamental understanding of reality. They weren't the ultimate predators. They were just another species of prey that had gotten lucky for a while. Through the neural link, Vasquez projected a simple message into the collective consciousness. "We are humanity. We are what happens when prey evolves to become the hunter. You are no longer the apex predator in this galaxy." The response was immediate. Every swarm unit in the hive began broadcasting the same signal, a psychic scream that carried across space to every connected collective throughout their territory. But it wasn't a battle cry. It was a retreat signal. "General," came Captain Torres's excited voice over the comm. "You're seeing this, right? Swarm bioships are disengaging from all fronts. They're running." Martinez watched her tactical display as thousands of swarm signatures began moving away from Coalition space, not retreating to defensive positions but actually fleeing toward the galactic rim. "They're abandoning their territory?" Admiral Kethavar asked in disbelief. "They're exhibiting survival behavior," Dr. Okafor explained over the comm. "For the first time in their evolutionary history, they've encountered something more dangerous than they are. Their response is to get as far away as possible." As Vasquez and her team evacuated the hive, the massive bioconstruct began shutting down its primary systems. The swarm wasn't just retreating, they were abandoning millions of years of territorial conquest. 3 hours later, the human fleet regrouped at the edge of the nebula. Behind them, the once mighty swarm hive drifted in space like a dead whale, its bioluminescent patterns fading to darkness. "General," Admiral Kethavar said quietly, "in one day, you've accomplished what the Coalition couldn't achieve in 3 years of warfare." Martinez nodded, but her expression remained serious. "Admiral, this isn't over. We've taught the swarm what fear feels like, but fear makes animals dangerous in unpredictable ways." "What do you mean?" "A cornered predator is the most dangerous kind," she replied. "The swarm is going to lick their wounds. adapt to what we've shown them, and come back stronger. This was just the opening move. But across coalition space, the impossible had happened. For the first time since the war began, swarm forces were in full retreat. Human training programs had turned defensive-minded coalition forces into aggressive hunters. The galaxy's greatest predators had learned what it felt like to be prey. 6 months later, Ambassador Kethavar stood before the Galactic Coalition Assembly as Earth was formally inducted as a member species. But the ceremony wasn't just about membership, it was about the creation of an entirely new military division. The Department of Xenological Threat Response, General Martinez announced to the assembled delegates, will be responsible for identifying and neutralizing existential threats to galactic civilization. You mean hunting monsters, said Admiral Thrak, who now wore the insignia of the Coalition's new Predator Command. Martinez smiled with predatory satisfaction. Admiral, when you've spent millions of years learning to kill things that want to eat you, the whole galaxy starts to look like a hunting preserve. As the ceremony concluded, reports were already coming in from deep space exploration teams. Strange signals from the galactic core, unidentified structures in the void between stars, ancient ruins that suggested other extinct civilizations. The galaxy, it seemed, was full of mysteries, and humanity had just announced itself as the species that specialized in solving them permanently. So what's next, General? Kethavar asked as they left the assembly hall. Martinez looked up at the stars visible through the station's transparent dome. Next, we find out what other impossible things are hiding in the dark. And then we teach them the same lesson we taught the swarm, which is that there's always a bigger predator. In the depths of space, something ancient stirred in response to the swarm's psychic screams. Something that had been sleeping between the stars for eons, waiting for the right signal to begin its own hunt.